All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Heritage Ohio Main Street 101 webinar for Thursday, October 24th. Sorry for the delay, everybody. We had a few technical difficulties getting everything up and running, but we should be in good shape now. Again, thank you for your attendance, and very pleased this afternoon to have Tom Starinsky presenting the Main Street 101 Design webinar. Tom is the Assistant Executive Director of the Cleveland Warehouse District in the Cleveland Gateway District. And I guess with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Tom to get started. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Joyce. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And sorry for the technical difficulties. It was all my fault. But we're here now and talking about design, which is one of the things, of all the Main Street things, one of the things I can talk on forever about, because it's with a fine art degree and a urban planning degree. It's one of the things that I tend to do better in all those things. So getting right into the presentation, what we're going to talk about today is, what do we mean when we say good design? I mean, it's kind of a subjective thing, and good design means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and everybody probably has a different definition to it. But there is a bit of a baseline to that, and we'll kind of go through that with everyone. And then there's the economics of preservation. You know, there's good design is all well and good, but how do you pay for it, and how do you make it happen, and how do you make it work for your district? And then the role of the design committee in the four-point approach. How does the design committee help the community thrive, and how does it work with the other organization committee and promotion committee and the economic development committee? So what do we mean when we say good design, and what does it mean to you? One of the things we talk about, the three things we really talk about when we talk about good design is first, how does it celebrate architectural heritage? Then how does the good design create a dynamic sense of place? And then also, how does it sustain economic vitality? Because that's really about mostly what we're all here for, is creating a dynamic, sustainable commercial district. Celebrating architectural heritage, really, acknowledging the community legacy. There's a history to all of our communities, and that there's a real very special thing that relates to the people in the community, as well as the visitors to the community, and how they identify it as visitors. And that legacy is something I think we all need to hold fast and celebrate and acknowledge in any way we can. But I think there's a point where, as you celebrate architectural heritage or the heritage, the history in your town, I think you also need to be cognizant of how cities and towns and commercial districts evolve over time. The picture on your left here is the Euclid Avenue Opera House in Cleveland, Ohio, on what's now Sheriff Street, what's now East 4th Street. The picture on the right is that actually the very same block in the 70s and 80s, and how the original theater district of the city of Cleveland, with the Euclid Avenue Opera House, evolved into a discount department store area, and then it even evolves even further into what it is today, where you had department stores and offices above. Now we have housing above, and restaurants and entertainment below. But those are the same buildings. The buildings in these pictures are the same buildings that were on the right hand of the slide, in the previous slide. And you can see how the neighborhood, the street evolved, and the district evolved. But still, we're using the history of the street and acknowledging that all the way through by giving those buildings a new life. And some of the funny things that I find with what we do in preserving commercial districts is a lot of developers nowadays are actually trying to mimic it with lifestyle centers. This is a lifestyle center called Legacy Village in Lyndhurst, up here near Cleveland. And you can see how they're trying to mimic the scale, mimic the public spaces, the walkability. So it's really a testament to everything that we do in preserving the integrity of our districts and the design of those districts, because our districts were built for people, not for cars. And the irony is that everybody has to drive to this place to experience the walkable place. And really, the scale of the place that we're working toward preserving is what really means everything to what we do. Creating a dynamic sense of place means the scale of the sidewalks, the scale, preserving the trees, the walkability of it, and really kind of how it all feels. The scale of buildings in relationship to the streets where the cars are, as well as the pedestrian areas, really means a lot to the sense of the place and how everything works. So we have the bones of how our commercial districts are laid out, with how I was talking about with the sidewalks in the street and the scale of the buildings, and then it really kind of shifts toward preserving the buildings. The images on the left, upper left, is a quote-unquote modernization of a building that a developer decided to restore. And so you see the lower left, you see how it is during construction, and then you see the results of that, and think about to yourself the difference between the two buildings. I mean, in some ways, the upper left is not a bad design, but you're ignoring the whole activity that's generated out of the upper floors. And so having the windows on the upper floors, celebrating the character of the district, acknowledging the legacy, and then activating the lower floors with, looks like, two businesses as opposed to probably one business before. You're doing a lot just in that little gesture of opening up that building and acknowledging its history. Here's a couple of other examples where you have a derelict building and you give it new life, opening up the windows, creating an opportunity for businesses to go in and generate activity into your neighborhood. Another one with apartments above, but still opening up the derelict area and breathing new life into that building as well as the whole district. So it kind of goes around in circles and say, well, if you're talking about good design, what's bad design? These are a couple examples of bad design. Where you have Victorian building in the upper left that have added shutters to building that actually don't cover the window, and then some signage that doesn't really enhance the businesses below. The upper right, where you have probably windows, two-story windows that really breathe life into the district and show the activity on the inside, totally covered up, and small windows at the bottom. The bottom left kind of speaks for itself in terms of altering the windows completely, and then the other two on the bottom right, just kind of covering up where you really generate the activity and transparency in the space. It will go a little bit as I keep talking about this. Another way that you continue the legacy of our commercial districts and preserve the sense of place is sensitive design of new buildings where maybe we lost a building or adding to the district as it grows. And these are a couple examples, or a few examples that really talk about addressing the scale. The upper left, you see how it's a new building and a historic building next to it, kind of peeking in on the right-hand part of the image. You're not building something that's out of scale with the district that begins to create a bad sense of place. The bigger picture on the right, the new building on the right-hand part of that image, and how it's obviously a modern gesture, but it really kind of respects what's going on the rest of the block and not overpowering everything and preserving that sensibility that goes throughout the district. Signage. Signage really adds a sense of place. I think a lot of people underestimate the value of signage from a lot of different standpoints, but from the aesthetic standpoint, a series of signs as businesses as you walk through a district as a visitor or as a resident really speaks to, you're creating that sense of place by the character of the businesses and then the character of the collection of businesses. And so having fun with that signage and really using it to tell the story of your business, the individual businesses as well as the businesses throughout the district really goes a long way. But there's a point where there's too much signage or redundant signage or signage that really speaks to the wrong audience. The ones on the bottom are really speaking to a car, and if you're really walking past that along a main street, you probably wouldn't really see the sign because it's so large. Or the redundancy of the signage with the drugstore on the upper left. Really, how many times you need to say who you are, where you to a point where you're saying it so often that you begin to not see it at all, and really thinking about how all that works together, creating a brand for the individual business as well as not creating visual clutter throughout the district. Just one quick thing on the signage. I've always thought about signage being one of the first signals a business has to tell people about what's happening in your store, and the next step once you get them coming across the street to your store is the creative displays that you put. So it really works again for the individual business and grabbing those people walking down the street to come in and see what you have to offer and to hopefully buy something. But collectively, the individual businesses creating their individual character actually creates an overall character throughout the district that really tells a story and really builds that sense of place. And then there's public realm. Public realm is kind of an odd generic word, but it's really what I describe as the public realm is the sidewalk from the building out to the curb and actually even in the roadways, and how is that designed? How is that scaled? How's the aesthetics of it? Trees, plantings, the scale of it. The plantings that businesses put into it, as well as the plantings that a main street or a city might put into it, and how does that make a visitor feel as they're walking past these great businesses? Streetscape amenities is another part of the public realm. The design of the street posts and how they interact with plantings, bus shelters, how you articulate pathways between different areas, between the main street and a park area, perhaps, how the outdoor cafes interact with the pedestrian area, and the other public green spaces, and how they interact and how they really kind of tell a story. And then even thinking about building lighting, like in the center bottom picture, where that really kind of enhances the architecture, but also in the evenings kind of adds to the life and how the place really feels. Public art is another one that I think a lot of us talk about, and how do you do it there's a lot of different ways where you can talk about public art. You can do it to tell a story or enhance something that's significant about the district. Excuse me. And how tell a story with the district and really enhance the identity and the brand of the district. You can use it like in the center, upper center, to provide gateways into special areas. I think that one is actually a gateway into a walkway that gets you into a parking area. Same with the bottom left one is a little gateway into a park area where there was before there were when there was a building there. The upper right one, excuse me, is a pretty interesting one from Portland where that public art is really dynamic and you can't see it in the image, but it's actually hiding the pole that holds the wires for the streetcar in that particular area. And there's a series of them down the street, and so it creates a dynamic thing for a pretty bland element in the streetscape. You can also tell the history with public art, like the bottom center, telling a history of that piece. And you can also use it to enhance a bland part of a building, like the side of the buildings or the back of the buildings, like in the lower right-hand side. Wayfinding is also a really important thing in the design of a city and in the commercial districts, because it really speaks to the visitor or the people coming to it and how they navigate, and makes it a comfortable, predictable way of getting around. So they don't feel uneasy, they feel safe, and they're not confused. So what we really want them to focus on is how to get to the commercial area and enjoy themselves, do some shopping, have some food, do what they need to do while they get there. So these are different examples of how that's done through banners and wayfinding for the vehicular aspect of it. Street signage, signage incorporated with lighting. That center lower picture is a kind of a fun way from Victoria, British Columbia, where they use the control boxes for the traffic as an opportunity to put a map on there to help people understand where they were. And I've seen that done in other areas where they just use that as public art as well. Parking. You'll notice in these slides that we chose, even though I say parking, there's not really a lot of pictures of cars in this. Because parking is a necessary aspect of our commercial districts, but it's more about using the wayfinding from the previous slide to get people to parking and to the place, but it's more about getting people to the commercial area without the cars being a dominant aspect of that experience. Upper left, obviously, I think you need to figure out different ways of getting people to there, especially if your Main Street, well, one for residents to get there, but also if your Main Street has recreational trails near it. So if there's going to be people riding their bikes through there that are visitors, where are they going to lock up their bikes? The design of the parking lots also can be enhanced, like the bottom left, where they use some public art to provide kind of a shield and a gateway, a visual element to market, so people knew they could park there, but it also wasn't like the dominant element. The design of parking structures in the bottom left, it's a necessary thing to have parking, but it doesn't mean that there couldn't be some architectural design to it to make it a visual element that, one, identifies itself as a parking garage, but it doesn't necessarily have to look like a parking garage. And then the upper right is a small park that was created as it's a passway from the parking garage to the commercial district. It's somewhere in California, I believe, and it's called Chess Park. So these sculptures were made to enhance that walk, make it feel comfortable and safe from the parking to the commercial district, but it ended up being a space that ended up being programs. There's chessboards out there, so chess clubs occupy that almost all the time, and there's storage inside those sculptures for the programming aspect of it. So parking doesn't have to be a bad word, an evil word. It actually can be fun and an actual positive element of the district. And then there's maintenance. Maintenance is something that we always forget about, put off to procrastinate, but it's a necessary thing that we need to do to preserve, going back to our legacy, preserving that, preserving architectural heritage, preserving the identity of our district in a lot of ways, and preserving the perception of our districts. Some of these pictures, an unkept business, or bricks that are spalling, or gutters that aren't maintained, give people the perception that the people who own buildings here or have businesses don't really care about it. So why would I, as a visitor, come see that? And it's a lot easier, a lot less expensive to maintain a building, as opposed to letting it get to the condition like in the upper right, where all of a sudden you have to start replacing bricks and getting into more serious, costly endeavors. So that's a lot about different elements of design, different aspects of the design, and different ways we can think about it. But really, what it boils down to is the economics of it and how we sustain economic viability. And there's just because a lot of what we're doing is it's an economic driver. What we do from the design standpoint drives the economy, drives people to the district, drives people to individual businesses, drives people to they'll tell their family and friends about it. So in this image, if you look to the right with the pink building, and how this business owner restored the building back to its original character, put proper design elements into it, really cleaned it up, enhanced it. That business owner saw a 25% increase in business following the remodeling. So you get your investment back when you take care of things and when you do it the right way. Similar to that, this is a business in the warehouse district, actually up here in Cleveland, that I worked with to put a sign up on their business. And it was lucky for me, so I can have this slide to give you this good story, that they took over a year to put up their sign after they opened. So for the longest time, they just had that awning that had their name on it, and that was it. And then we worked with them to put that great sign up, and we waited a little bit while, and we went into his books to see if we can compare a month before and after the sign went up, and we found that month, and that in that month we found there was a 20% increase of business after the sign was installed. So that really kind of speaks to what we as visitors and patrons see walking down the street, and how that affects the decisions we make. Conversely, thinking about not doing anything and what happens if we don't do anything, waiting for something else to happen. Here is a slide that we get from Donovan Ripkema, who is an expert in the economics of historic preservation, and he quantified the impact on a small town of having one empty building in a commercial district for 1 year. And you can read through that and see that that's a lot of lost money, opportunity from a lot of different groups, from the property owners to the cities, state and local government, to the businesses, and in a lot of ways, what he probably is not even capturing is how the business that would be generated from that, if there was a business open in this building, how that generates through the economy, and how it's affects the businesses around it, from the banks that get the deposits and that like. So the economics of preservation. How do we find ways? How do we take advantage of some of our opportunities to pay for some of these things, and how do we create opportunities from that? Development incentives is a lot of what everyone probably has already heard about. But those development incentives really speak to the revitalization of our districts, taking advantage of historic preservation strategies when we're talking about the history and the financial incentives that happen with that, talking about sustainability of our buildings from an environmental standpoint, a green standpoint. Really, the greenest building is the building that is already built, not building a building that's green, but preserving the building that's already there. And then the place economics, how we maintain and grow property values and income tax, and maintain and grow commercial tax income by maintaining these buildings and continuing them to be vital, economically vital, and full of people. So development tax incentives. I won't go into detail on these, but these are the ways that a lot of us make some of these opportunities happen. The federal historic tax credit is a 20% credit. Now there's historic, or there's been for several years now, Ohio historic preservation credits that are 25% of a budget. Some towns can use new market tax credits, and then there's also historic conservation easements. All of these have been used in various ways, from big cities to small towns, to use those incentives that make some of these good design opportunities possible. An example here in Cleveland, we've enjoyed some more major investments with a convention center and casino, but really those big investments don't mean anything unless the community and the property owners leverage those investments. So we're actually enjoying a lot of development here, but all of that development is rehabbing existing buildings. None of it is new construction, and the majority of those, except for maybe one building, are using historic preservation strategies for it. There's probably over 9 projects in planning or under construction that are using those, and that to me speaks a lot about how this all works and how historic preservation really means the revitalization. I mean, we can talk all day about legacies and history and beautiful buildings and administration, but the fact that we have these incentives to do this really goes a long way, because it's where revitalization in this country, in my opinion, is really happening. Here's a little bit more about the tax credits. The buildings need to be income producing. They need to do a substantial rehabilitation. You get credits for qualified expenditures. And these are all buildings that are certified National Register projects or National Register buildings. And then one big piece of this is the use of the Chapter 34 of the Ohio Basic Building Code. It's actually part of the International Building Code. There's a part of the code that speaks to older buildings. There's an aspect of, if you were building a new building and making it a safe and healthy building, is different than what it was with historic buildings. The challenge is that a lot of the you have to preserve the historic elements of the building. The example I always use is the stairwells. In historic buildings are usually pretty dramatic elements to the history of the building, but don't meet current fire code. Use of this building code actually allows architects to preserve those elements, but also make sure that it's a safe and healthy building, and it meets current code through that. And so the use of this is actually one of the most important aspects of using tax credits, because using that code gets you to be able to preserve the elements that you need to preserve in order to get the historic tax credits, but it's a safe and healthy building. These are the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation are the basic guidelines that everyone uses during these tax credit projects. And really, they're a good rule of thumb whether you're using tax credits or not using tax credits if the project's smaller or just doesn't make sense to. Retaining the different elements of the building, avoid removing historic materials, respect its period and style, especially the distinctive features. Any major alteration or additions to it respect the historic significance and differentiate it from the historic building, but complement it. Things that really speak to some of the slides earlier in the presentation where some of those alterations may not have been that respectful, and really thinking about that and being thoughtful about that. And once you kind of get in the right frame of mind, it really becomes more of a simple, almost intuitive way of thinking. Here's a couple examples. You see the building on the left with a vacant storefront. Well, maybe there's a business in there, but you can't really tell. And certainly nothing happening on the upper floors. And restore that building, bring it back, bring the brick back and the stone elements, preserving the cornice area along the top, opening up the upper 2 floors to be habitable, either with offices or residential, and then putting a great transparent storefront with signage that is in keeping with the building and really gives that building a lot of new life. Here is an example of a breakdown of using these incentives in a project. So this particular project used Clean Ohio funds, probably for remediation of asbestos and such, and then the federal and state tax credits to add to that equity, and then the rest of the purple area was financing. But you can see that over half of the of this pro forma was actually derived from the 3 incentive programs that are only available to, well, the federal and the state tax are only available to historic buildings, and the Clean Ohio funds are available to buildings being renovated, not to new construction, because they're typically remediation or maybe for a vacant lot. Development incentives, city or county programs. Many of us, either entitlement or non-entitlement programs, have access to community development block grant dollars. A lot of those dollars are used for creating facade programs or for building projects, renovation projects. My particular program gets community development block grant dollars for some of our general operating from the city of Cleveland. Storefront renovation programs, whether they're funded through CDBG or from the city or the county, go a long way to incentivizing the renovations that we're talking about when we're talking about good design. The storefront program in Cleveland for downtown and neighborhoods actually provides design assistance as well. So there's a design specialist, and then there's in the Cleveland program, it's a 40% rebate up to $25,000 for a facade renovation, and 40% rebate up to $3,000 for if you were just doing a sign. There's rental assistance opportunities through different programs, tax abatement that the county or city that can provide when you're for the value added when you renovate a building. And then there's vacant building registry, which is something that's kind of catching on a lot in the state of Ohio, Sandusky, Painesville. I know there's more that's happened since then. There's been a couple of trainings that Heritage Ohio has hosted about this. Basically what it is, it's the Sandusky case has run this program through the fire departments because the vacant buildings cause an issue in terms of fire safety, and so the property owners of vacant buildings are required to register their building with the city, and there's a fee that is required with that. And the more as time goes on, but year by year, that your building continues to be vacant, that fee increases. So it's become an incentive for a building owner to just sell the building and get off of it and make way for somebody who's willing to make an investment, or finally get that building owner to make that investment. And it's been great in Paynesville and Sandusky, as I hear. And what it does is it kind of pushes you into these other opportunities with the storefront programs or rental assistance, and it kind of pushes them into those programs to make some of that stuff happen. Different ways organizations can create opportunities for doing some of these elements that create sense of place in our districts, whether it's through public realm improvements or encouraging good signage or encouraging renovation or encouraging to do developments, revolving loan programs, where an organization fundraises somehow through foundations or sponsorships of a certain pot of money, and that money gets loaned to a developer to do something, and as that developer pays that money back, it can be loaned out again to other projects. And as time goes on, that revolving loan fund can grow depending how it's structured with fees or interest. But the beauty of those is that they revolve and they just continue to go back into the community. You're not making money to make money. You're making money to reinvest back into the district. Different retail incentive programs that create opportunities for people to open up businesses. There's one in Cleveland that there's a Charter One Bank has done some really great inventive incentive programs where they work with a host organization for a commercial district, and then they create competitions for people to come up with retail ideas and win incentives for retail, or excuse me, lease relief or rental relief, or business money for startup costs. Crowdfunding is another opportunity that's happened a lot in the last few years. There's a book called Locavesting by Amy Cortez that talks a lot about some of these opportunities that are happening. She goes in way more depth than I'm about to go to, but crowdfunding is just going to the community in a lot of ways. That goes to the community to get investments into opportunity to create a business. So business people have been using this. Kickstarter is one. I'm actually working on a crowdfunding campaign here in Cleveland with a platform called CrowdRise. Basically, what it is people are giving to the business, whether it's 10 or 20 or $100 or it's $1,000, and they create a pool of money that the businesses then can invest into their business. It's done in a lot of different ways that I've heard over the years. Sometimes it's a small community that's losing their department store, and the community doesn't want to see it go because it's a real asset, but there's nobody to carry it on. So the community gets together and creates an investment opportunity where the community buys a share of the business, and they become investors in the business, and they're incentivized to shop there because they want the business to thrive, but they also yield some money out of the investments. Another example that Amy Cortez has in her book is two people who in Brooklyn who really wanted to open up a bookstore. They thought there was a need for it, but they just didn't have the money. So they did a crowdfunding campaign. I think it was just more of a, it wasn't on any kind of internet platform. It was just kind of talking to your neighbors. And they got something like 70 people who donated $1,000 with a promise of a certain percentage of return and discounts on books. And with that, they were able to open up the business. So we move on to the role of the design committee. That's a really essential aspect of everything that we're talking about up to now, because nobody knows about this stuff. And a lot of it's really technical. Some of it's kind of boring. Some of it's kind of hard to understand because it's subjective. So it's really the role of the Main Street to help people understand it, help people get it, help people get excited about it. And the first way that happens, well, it happens through education, planning and guidance, and implementation. So with education, that begins with tours and events. Just getting people out, and students and people and visitors out to see what's happening in their community. Whether you do it through scavenger hunts, whether you do it through guided tours, whether you do it through maps, or things that happen during the events that you have that really tell the story, help people understand what's happening, why it's happening, and why it's important. We do here in Cleveland a series of tours called Take a Hike. And it's 5 free tours during the course of the week, and they're the same tours every week. We do it from Labor Day, or Memorial Day to Labor Day. And they tour a specific area of downtown, the Warehouse District, the Gateway District, Playhouse Square. And on that professional guided walking tour, people also come across actors playing historical figures that are significant of that district. And people love them. We gave something like 88 tours last year, free tours last year, that the total attendance was over 3,000 people. And they're free tours, but we also have, of course, suggested donations, and people are always happy to give a donation to it because they love it so much. But what we do with that, while we're giving people insight in the history of the district and history of what's happening in this district, we're also telling them what's happening today. So we're educating them about what this place was, but we're also educating them about what's happening today. And we're getting a lot of people in from the suburbs that are coming in and haven't been in for a while, but they might be just interested in hearing the tour. But then they're leaving the tour with a totally new perception on what's happening in downtown Cleveland. Publications and plaques, using opportunities through posters or plaques or other types of information that help tell that story that's similar to the tours, but still getting into a different type of audience. Public art. Public art obviously enhances the district no matter what it is, but these are some examples of how you can educate people and enhance the story and the legacy of the place through different ways. The upper right is Asheville, North Carolina, where they have a heritage trail, and it's a series of pieces of public art that are located throughout the downtown. There's a corresponding brochure that helps you find them, but there's also kind of crumbs in the road that kind of tell you that you're on the trail, that you're going to the next one. This is a large, probably over 6 feet tall, flat iron standing on the sidewalk that speaks about the garment industry that occurred in that specific area. And it's really, I think it's a really successful one because it's not just, there's some traditional sculptures, there's some kind of more modern sculptures, and there's just large elements like this one that that are out. So it creates interest throughout the district. It creates some curiosity for people coming through the district, but it also educates people about the district. The mural on the bottom right is a mural that first and foremost enhances a bland side of a building, but then it also is an opportunity to tell a story about something that happened in that place. The Warehouse District Anthology piece is a project that we're working on in the Warehouse District that we're about to install the first 2 of 10 chapters that we're calling pieces of public art in the public realm. And basically what we did is the person who knows the most history in our district, we sat them down and said, what are the 10 stories that need to be told here? You know, architectural styles, the garment industry, early settlers, stories like that. And then we were able to find funding to hire an artist who's designing each of the 10 chapters, and the historians writing the chapters. And they'll similar to the Asheville, they'll be located throughout the district and tell the stories. And we're planning to use them in a couple different ways. One is the discovery aspect of it, and 2, it's the visual aspect of it. Just, you know, really great piece of public art that those are 3.5 feet wide and 11 feet tall. And then they're also, when we're giving tours, whether they're take a hike tour or it's me touring around a tour group of students or potential developers, they become visual aids for me to use to help tell the story. Public art, another way you can use public art is a trendy way is to, there was an example of it in the public art piece in the design aspect of this presentation where you're using it to tell a piece of history. But this is a project in St. Clair Superior neighborhood in Cleveland that has a large Asian community. So they celebrate the Chinese zodiac calendar, where there's a year of a dog, or year of the pig, a year of the snake. And each year of that particular year, let's say the dog, they have a dog, and then they petition artists to create a piece of public art on that dog, and then those dogs are placed throughout the district, which creates interest in the district. But then at the end of the program, they're auctioned off, and then they're used as a fundraiser for the organization. So it's a great way to tell a story, but make a little bit of money at the same time. Education also is working with your media. There's no better way of promoting what you're doing and how you're doing it and why it's significant than creating a relationship with the media outlets and having them tell your story. It doesn't cost you any money, and it gets in the hands of as many people as possible to let people know what's happening in your community and why it's important. So while we're talking to all these people and trying to get them to use these incentives to do great things in their buildings and in the community, we always have to take a step back and remember to celebrate those successes. Celebrate when a park opens, celebrate when a sign is installed, or honor them and their investment and their commitment to the neighborhood through annual meetings and award ceremonies. Also, it's taking opportunities to promote what you do through publications, or using publications that exist, like this one from the National Trust, or the newsletters that Heritage Ohio uses, or what the Main Street Center is publishing to help get the word out. It goes a long way to have Heritage Ohio and the Main Street Center behind you when you're talking about talking to people and convincing them to redevelop their building, because you talk to them every day, and they might be thinking, yeah, that's just Tom talking to me. I get that, but you know, who else is using that? So when you can use these publications to see what else people in Ohio are doing, or what people in Iowa or New York are doing, it goes a long way to say, wow, I guess I can do this if they can do it there. The other part of education is helping people understand what it really means to do these renovations, the cost savings that can occur by renovating your windows. There's also a lot of myths out there about how much renovation costs, or I have to have these vinyl windows because the wood windows are unrepairable, or new wood windows are too expensive. The being armed with that information, whether it's through the outlets with National Main Street, or with Heritage Ohio, or with your colleague organization, goes a long way. We in the warehouse took a long time ago when we were starting to jumpstart the renovation of all the buildings and the reuse of all the buildings. We were up against the myth that it was more expensive to renovate this building than it was to tear it down and build a new one. So we were able to raise funds from a foundation for a program that we call the Pre-Development Fund. And basically what we used it as a way to pay for studies that basically countered their argument and showed, with the use of tax credits, with the use of alternative building code and all these other aspects, that if you use them wisely, use them sensitively, you could restore that building. And it was cheaper than tearing it down and building it. That program actually continues. We continue to use it on a lot of these buildings, but it was strategic and a long time ago to actually get people to convince that, you know, it really was possible. And this slide kind of reiterates what I was just talking about. I think a lot of people are intimidated by the tax credit, and they feel like they're being told what to do. That's too restrictive if I use the tax credits, or they'll never let me be able to do it. I'll never be able to open a business here with all these restrictions. And there's a lot of case studies out there, and it doesn't take much to find them to see how people have successfully done tax credit projects. They successfully even restored buildings without tax credit, but value of them and the value it means to the community is important. But the reality, what a lot of these myths are meant to bust, is that there's a financial aspect to it that's over and above the beauty of the building. It's actually possible and better from an economic standpoint. Piece to that. And that's just reiterating the building code aspect of proper repair and construction methods. I think that is an important one as well. Helping the construction trades and the architects in your community, working with architects who know historic buildings and know proper mortar techniques. You get into a lot of technical stuff, but it really makes a difference. Historic brick is a different animal than contemporary brick, and you need to find opportunities to educate the trades, or find the trades that know it and have them educate the trades to make sure these things get done correctly. There's a lot of stuff that related to the alternate building code that deals with the ADA issues. Another myth that I'll never be able to reserve this building and meet ADA code, and a lot of this is addressed in the alternative building code, and all the buildings that we know that have been restored all meet those aspects. There's ways of making a fully accessible, respectful building to the ADA community, but restore it in all its glory. One quick word before I move on to this about economics of preservation. and what it means to restoring a building and how it actually affects the economy of our places. Another quote that we often use from Donovan Rikma is renovation of a building actually adds more to the economy of a community than a new construction project. A new construction project is heavy in materials, which tends to be bought outside of the community, and lower in labor, which is the aspect of a construction project that's local. A renovation project tends to be high in labor and lower materials because the materials are already here. It's just the materials that we need to replace that are the aspect of it. So the benefit that creates is that the money is going into the pockets of the people working on the building, and those people go get their haircuts, they eat out, they buy groceries. All that stuff is happening within the community, and that reverberates to the community through multiple different ways, and that then creates a more sustainable economy for that area. So planning and guidance. Another role for the design committee and the Main Street organization is to use all of these aspects of design, the aspects of public realm and wayfinding, and work with the community to find what's right for them through public meetings, through education, through bringing speakers in, or going to trainings like this to help the community understand what it is, and then help them, give them the tools to make great decisions for the community that enhances their identity, enhances their design, and enhances the sustainability of that place. Something that happens often during that planning aspect is to create a building inventory, so that the community, the design committee understands what we have, and it helps in a lot of different ways. If you look at the websites in the bottom left, those are actually the upper one is from University of Wisconsin, and you can go there and download it and use it yourself for free. It just creates a baseline, so the community creates a understanding of what's there, from square footage to the condition and how its use and how it can be used, and it becomes a good planning tool for as you undertake the planning aspect of what we do. Another piece of that is creating design guidelines. So as you're creating plans and understanding your building stock, there's also the importance of creating guidance and education of what's appropriate and what works for your individual type of building, and what works for the uses, and what's a good way of doing it. Something that's clear and concise, that's not punitive. It's guidance to make their buildings the most economically viable. A lot of times these things can kind of get stuck in crazy words like fenestration and cornices and brick courses, and really you really need to boil it down to the basics of, this is what's best for your building, and this is what's going to make your building most economically viable from an image standpoint, which ultimately is most rentable. This is actually a good way of educating the community about this. When you're doing a case study, showing what the building was, showing the drawings that were drawn to make it happen and how it all worked, and then showing the finished project. Using a project that you get to happen as an example of the process, and it breaks down the stigma, breaks down the uncomfortableness of, this is too daunting a task for me to do, and helps people understand how it gets done, and that it actually can get done. Those guidelines also can educate people this way by illustrating what what's acceptable and what's not acceptable and why it works, and what it means to the community, and helping people understand all of that. The design review and design review guidelines always get a stigma, but if they're done correctly and done as a tool, that is more about the conversation and helping people understand it, they tend to be more successful. You never just give the guidelines over to somebody and say, here it is, come back to me when you're ready to talk to me again. It's a document you sit down and you talk with people about it. All of this works together, and all of these things are different elements that work together in the planning aspect of it. Different ways of planning or different ways of guiding people through the plan. The plan usually happens first, and then the guidelines kind of meet the plan in its implementation. And all of this is kind of the role of the committee to and the Main Street program to help people understand it, include them. It's very important to include people in this so they understand it and they see the value of it. And so this is an example of what that could do, and it's a result of a community plan. And this is an illustration of renderings that occur once the plan starts to happen, so people understand what it's going to look like. You know, elevations and maps are sometimes intimidating to read, but if you start getting into elevations or renderings like this, it breaks down that wall that makes people understand it better. And in implementation, it's about we're not here just to talk about this stuff. We're here to actually make some of this happen. So this is an example of how this community took this derelict parcel and created in a community space, and how that works with the community and what that value is. This is some plans that come from the warehouse district. The upper left is a master plan, that more technical plan that talks about the renovation of the building, parking strategies that we used early on. And then the lower left is our realm plan, an aspect of the public realm plan that really started speaking to the character of the space. In both of these plans, we created a community. We're lucky to have some great design professionals in the district, and so we used them to create the plan. And you only used consultants when we needed to get more schematic or more design elements that was beyond the scope of volunteers to do. And we used that plan with the city to go and get funding from where the city has access to federal funds for streetscape and aspects like that. Do this major streetscape project that, this is an old picture, it's under construction this spring, now it's finished. And with a major investment that we got through the city and the federal government, we've used that to leverage investment through sponsorships of banners and the public art and aspects of that, which is the rendering in the upper right is one of our visual aids for that. And so we're also working on gateway elements and other aspects like that. So this is just kind of an example of how we've used the different planning aspects and working with the community, because the communities always have a resident and a business owner and a property owner at the very least on them, and how we use that to bubble up into actual implementation. So I think this is the last slide, and it's really just to sum it up. It's really about the conversation about design and how it can occur in all the different ways. Talk about design. It all depends on what your office is. You can talk about it from a historical standpoint. You can talk about it from an architectural standpoint. You can talk about it from a placemaking standpoint and what it's like, what the sense of place of your community is. or you can talk about it in a purely financial equity standpoint. And they're all valid, and all different ways of talking about it that means something to whoever your audience is. With that, I guess I'll turn it back over to Jeff, and I guess we'll have questions.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. Certainly appreciate your thorough understanding and presentation on the design approach and the design point. Very good information. As of now, there are no questions so far from the audience, but we'll wait 30 seconds or so and see if any pop up. But yeah, please feel free at this time if you do have a question for Tom to go in and go ahead over to the control panel and type your question in the question section. All right, Tom, here is the first one from Jen Reed. Jen wants to know if you have a design review board in your district.
Yeah, we do. Our design review board, I'll just use the warehouse district one as a historic district. Our design review board is something I actually get paid to do through our CDBG contract, because it's a design review is triggered in Cleveland by having a local district, and not by the National Register district. And so the local warehouse district design review committee is a advisory body to the Landmark Commission, which is the city body that actually issues the certificate of appropriateness. And so we work pretty closely with them. I think we worked a relationship to the point that a lot of times if it's a simple project, the Landmarks Commission will approve it administratively with our approval. We'll approve any exterior improvement, whether it's an awning or a sign or a whole storefront renovation or a complete renovation or a new building.
All right. Thanks, Tom. No other questions at the moment. Again, I'll wait a few seconds and see if anything pops up. And a follow-up to that question, Tom, as a Main Street manager, are you directly involved with CDBG grants to give to your community?
No, we're entitlements. We get CDBG dollars from the city of Cleveland. So the my contract with the city for the CDBG funds is to do the design review aspects that I mentioned, business assistance, and I think promotion. Yeah, promotion aspects of what I do. Oh no, and I also do coordinate the city storefront renovation program for the entire downtown with that contract as well.
Yeah, and just to clarify that it's typically, and it doesn't always fall this way, but communities under 50,000 in population don't get their CDBG allotment directly from the Fed. They have to go through the state through an application process for community development, block grant funds. Communities, again, these are plenty of exceptions, but that's the general outline. Communities over 50,000 in population will get their CDBG dollars directly from the Fed and choose how to spend those through their own processes. Next, from Evelyn Moore Cummings. Tom, what criteria do you think should be considered when reviewing a demolition?
That's a good question. The first criteria is whether or not the significance of the building from a historical or the community's legacy aspect of it. Because I think that's really important for us to think about the legacy and not not take it lightly. I think the other pieces of it is from the urban planning aspect of it. Where is that building located in the block? Missing that building, what will it do to the community from an urban design standpoint? Are you creating a gap in the middle of a block so that it causes a scar in the community from pedestrian standpoint? I mean, we know from urban planning stuff that people tend to walk when there's continuous line of thing to look at, a continuous row of stores, continuous row of restaurants. And if that gets interrupted, that's a problem because people stop walking. And so the placement of that structure means a lot to whether or not it'll be missing. I guess another piece to it, in a pragmatic way, might be controversial to some preservationists, is that is the building going to be replaced with something better? Is that building obsolete? Is its design not really creating the most economic value for the parcel in that part of the downtown? And can it be replaced with something that would make the community better, make that place more economically viable, and aspects like that. So I guess those are the three things that I would think about first, just on the on-site, and it probably goes deeper than that as you continue the conversation.
Right. And another one from Jen. Thanks for the answer so far. My community is letting me select how to use a $30,000 CDBG grant. I was interested in criteria you may have used to put in an application.
Mine's going to be a lot different, Jen, because I basically go into my CDBG and make it as simple as possible, so reporting as simple as possible, since I've been doing it for 11 years. So I really only use my money for staff time, salaries toward those projects I mentioned, the storefront design review and economic development. So I try to make it as simple as possible for me, just from a small staff standpoint. I mean, I guess for you, I think you're going in for more project specific, and if you're thinking about doing it towards some design projects like a storefront, like a facade renovation or a signage program or something, I'd be glad to talk to you offline about that. If there's some things that I think might speak well to what HUD is looking for in terms of some of these projects.
Okay. We'll wait a few more seconds, see if anybody other questions pop up. All right. Well, Tom, thank you very much for all your time today and taking the time to put this presentation together and informing everybody on your knowledge of the design approach. Thanks everybody for tuning in. This is being recorded, so we will have this saved and be able to post it to our website so that you can share with your own committees and boards. So again, thanks, Tom. Thanks everybody for listening to the webinar today, and I hope you all have a great day. Take care.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.